Hello! Thank you all for your patience. Hi, and welcome to There Is Nothing presenting behind me. That'll probably change in a minute, but if it doesn't, we're just going to pretend that it does. Yes, we have slides! Yes, fantastic! I would like to say that this is the first time that I've gotten an applause just for having slides, but that would not be true. I had a similar situation once last year where a presentation in the middle of presenting, it just stopped. Like 20 minutes in, oh no. Luckily, this happened at the beginning, so we didn't even miss any live demos. Not that there really are any for salary negotiation. Anyway, hello, and welcome to A People Pleaser's Guide to Salary Negotiation. I'm Colleen, and there's going to be a lot of flashing, I suppose. Don't really know what's going on there. Sorry. All right, here's what we're going to do today. First, we're going to go over a little bit of my background, like why the heck am I telling you about salary negotiation? Am I even qualified? Then we'll talk about what being a people pleaser means. Then why it matters, who it hurts, and then I'll get on to the actual practical advice. All right, let's get started. First of all, that is me. I'm Colleen Lavin. I'm a developer relations lead at Portugal. We do hardware, connected hardware. And I am also a recovering people pleaser. I even picked a picture of me with my dog, so you would like me more. Hope it worked. I come from a very, very, very long line of people pleasers. Back in the States, we were just called Midwesterners. But so much so that, I always thought that I was a pretty bad people pleaser. I knew this about me. It's a flaw that I figured I would just have to live with. And then it started actually negatively impacting my life and my career. So when I first was applying for tech jobs, when I was first trying to get my first real job that wasn't an internship, I couldn't actually believe that people wanted to hire me and pay me real money. I knew I was pretty good at what I did in theory, but the idea that someone actually would pay me more money than I had ever made before in my life didn't make sense to me. And I'd heard a lot of vague advice that always just floats out there, like, you should always negotiate. Make sure that you get a company to pay you what you're worth. That doesn't work when you do not really believe what you are worth. So when I got my first ever tech job offer, I went to my parents for advice, which, since my parents are worse people pleasers than I am, was a terrible, terrible decision. My mom gave me the worst negotiation advice anyone has ever given anyone in the history of advice. Does anyone want to guess what it is? What? Take the offer? Yes? Offer up what you think they should pay you? All right, anyone else? They're not going to pay you? Okay, you know what? Her advice wasn't that bad. But it was pretty bad. The advice was, just tell the hiring manager that you trust them and are sure they'll give you a fair wage. I believe I saw a few people cover their face in secondhand shame there, so yeah. What's worse is that I actually followed that advice and verbatim said those words. Later, I found out that I was making $10,000 less than a person who started at around the same time and had less relevant experience than me. So negotiation matters. And negotiation matters for a lot of people. But I found that the people who are most unlikely to negotiate in general are people pleasers. Now, can I have a show of hands? Who here in the crowd thinks that they are a people pleaser? All right. Pretty high percentage, though I do imagine there is some self-selecting going on. The people who show up to a people pleaser's guide to salary negotiation are a little bit more likely to be people pleasers than the average population. I put together a little bit of a list for people pleaser identification. But honestly, even if you don't fit all of these things, if you think you're a people pleaser, you probably are a people pleaser. If you're someone who always just puts others' needs above your own, yeah, it's probably going to negatively impact you at some point in time or another. But why does this actually matter? Like, aside from the obvious that it sucks to find out that your colleague is making more than you, does it actually matter in the long run? Like, yes, I would like to make more money, but I was still able to pay my bills. But that's not really the point. I keep on pressing this before I am supposed to, so I'm so sorry. Who here, can you raise your hand if you did not negotiate for your current job, for your current salary? All right, good number of you. Statistically, overall, about 57% of people take their current, who have been polled, accepted their current job without negotiation. And that's a little weird because 64% of employers actually expect a negotiation when they make a job offer. And I've been on both sides of it at this point in my career. I've been the interviewee, I've been the interviewer, and I would say that I do actually expect someone to push back a little bit. Not in a mean way, but I expect someone to advocate for themselves in the best way possible. Because that is who should be advocating for them. HR is not your friend. Now, and this is more interesting because 85% of people who did negotiate in their most recent position got at least some of what they asked for. And I can say since I started negotiating, I've had offers go up 30% from what I was originally offered. Since I originally started negotiating, my salaries jumped 60%. And now some of that is just career growth. I am no longer a junior. But a lot of it is that I've actually stopped being afraid to say, hey, I don't think I can take that for that number. And this has this does have an impact in society overall. Like, it's not just people pleasing. It's that the system is set up in a way that hurts certain groups over others. The system is set up that a lot of people who become people pleasers, and not all, definitely not all, but a lot of people who become people pleasers become so because they kind of have to. It's a coping strategy to deal with a hostile world, to deal with an environment that's stacked against them. And now, 30% more women than men are self-described people pleasers, and 51.3% of men negotiated the salary for their current job versus 35.8% of women. And this doesn't really go deep into the demographics at all. If you break it down even more, there is a lot more nuance, but we'll go with broad strokes because my notes are not displaying today. And even if you do negotiate, by the way, 60% of offers extended to men, even before negotiation, are higher than those of the same level extended to women. Yay! If if anyone is interested, I can provide sources for all of this. I didn't just like make up these numbers. They are far too depressing for me to make up. I truly thought they were a little closer. And white men, by the way, are the most likely demographic to have actually ever asked for a raise. So some of you might be thinking, like, okay, they get it because they ask for it. I guess this demographic is just better than the others. No, you guys aren't thinking that. You're cool. No, because, and I used to, when I first started negotiating, I thought that I should just emulate my version of a successful white guy, which is the sitcom character Jack Donaghy from 30 Rock, which is a great show that I hope some of you have seen, but if you haven't, you should. Like, it's awesome. But when I first started trying to negotiate, it was really hard to actually do this as myself. So in every scenario, I would just pretend a little bit that I was someone else, that I was a fictional character, and then I would respond as if the fictional character would respond, which, by the way, is not a great idea to basically write fan fiction of your own life that you've self-inserted. Like, it also, like, it was effective in some ways, but in others it wasn't. Because people respond to that a lot differently than they respond to this. And it's not just in negotiation scenarios, by the way. I used to have a wonderful, wonderful coworker named Dan, who would often, he'd never coded a lick in his life, but he would often come in and be my backup white guy in meetings, where if I was having trouble with a customer, and I'd been saying the same thing for time and time again, and they would ask me, can you bring in someone more technical? And I would bring in Dan, who, again, does not know the difference between JavaScript and Java. And he would say the exact thing that I had told him to say, and he would often, like, mispronounce SQL, but he would then be told, like, oh, great, thank you for saying that. We've been hoping someone would come in with the voice of reason for saying the exact thing I'd been saying, which is to say, even if you follow the exact same advice, it doesn't always work. And 300% more raises are approved for men versus women. Because implicit and explicit bias exists. It does. There have been numerous studies on this, and this is not simply a problem that can be fixed by leaning in. No offense to Sheryl Sandberg, but a lot of offense to Sheryl Sandberg. I hate that book, and I hate that concept, because we're not going to fix inequality with a conference talk and a can-do attitude. But we've got to do something. Like, look, men are offered higher salaries than women for the same job 60% of the time, even before negotiations. And what we can do is try our damnedest to get the wages our peers are getting. We can work to make the hiring process at our jobs more equitable once hired. And we can lift each other up. But you do have to, like, actually try to negotiate. I've definitely tried myself to just be like, oh, the system's terrible, I'm just going to not play it. But that just ends with you making $10,000 less than your nearest coworker. And that sucks. So you do have to try. When women but the negotiation advice that we traditionally see is pretty much always aimed at a certain group. And when women and other underrepresented groups negotiate by following this advice, they're often seen as pushy, or demanding, or some other word that means that they're not fitting in the box that they're supposed to. And so you have to find a process that you're most comfortable with. And all that it really matters is that it works for you. And so in a minute, we're going to go over some things that work for me. But I want to have one caveat really quick. So capitalism. Look, I've given this talk a few times, and one thing that's come up is another group that often doesn't negotiate is anyone who comes from a poorer or lower middle class background, and I get it. Like, I find it really hard sometimes to look at a salary that is 3 times what my friends who are social workers or teachers make, and then say, no, that is not enough for me. But accepting a lower pay just because our industry is overvalued in some ways does not actually help. It's weird, it's messed up, but holding it against yourself and using it as an excuse not to ask for more, it doesn't work. Like, my job writing code and sending emails and spending way too much time sending GIFs on Slack does pay more than my friend who is actually saving lives as a paramedic. And that sucks. But salary does not determine human worth, and if you are underpaid, don't beat yourself up about it. It's the problem is largely with the system itself. Anyway, next up is my tactics. These are very specific to me. You wouldn't get this from any other guy. These are just weird things that happen to work for me. And they don't have to work for you, but a lot of them I do suggest. All right, tactic 0. The goal of negotiation is not to make a new best friend. You're not going to come out of this with friendship bracelets. You're probably never going to hang out with the HR manager at your job. And I don't necessarily know if you would want to. Mine is lovely. She's great. I actually did hang out with her last week. But you can be as nice as you want to be, but you shouldn't allow that niceness to prevent you from asking for what you believe is the value you bring. And that's tactic 0, because that should just be an overarching thing. As much as I secretly want every single person to like me in every single situation, it doesn't actually really have to be the goal of negotiating a job interview. And it's a weird tightrope, because I know through the entire negotiation process, the whole thing is to make them like you and think you're competent and think that they need to have you on their team. And if you extend that into the point where they've already offered you a job, and you're still trying to convince them, oh, yeah, like me, oh, yeah, I'll work for pennies, you're not going to have a good time. So go into it with a goal other than making a friend. Tactic 1, research everything. Research, find out as much as you can about the pay in your area, at your level, for your position, with specialties. Determine your non-negotiables. At the start of your job search, look at salary data as well as your goals. But besides that, there are a few things, by the way. There are websites for this. In the US, there's Glassdoor, there's levels.fyi. Those are where you should start, but you can get much more in-depth than that. For instance, do you know that if you find people on LinkedIn who used to have the same exact job as you at the job that you're talking to, they often will just tell you what they made, especially if they didn't like it? Like, turns out that's a thing you can do. Like, you can just reach out to someone, be like, hey, I got an offer from this place that you used to work. would you be up for answering a couple of my questions? You don't even have to directly ask about salary. I found out that if somebody accepts that weird-ass request from you, they might just tell you their salary without you asking. In fact, 90% of the time they will. Okay, I've only done this like 7 times, so that percentage isn't strictly true, but there have been no actual studies done on that, but anecdotally, it really works. If someone actually replies to your LinkedIn, like, hey, and you just have to do a very simple LinkedIn message, like, hey, hope this isn't weird. I cannot stop myself from including that nicety. Like, hope it isn't weird. Hope you're having a great day. Would you mind? I noticed you used to work at this place. They just gave me an offer. I was just wondering. I really liked them, but I wanted to check in since you worked there last. Like, are there any things that I should be aware of, or anything you'd want me to know? If they answer that, and let's face it, most people love that sort of gossip, like love being included in that sort of thing. If they answer that, they're giving you details. They could be nice details. They could be like terrible details. They could be in between. Fun fact, for my current job, in the middle of negotiation process, the recruiter I'd been working at left the company, and then immediately sent me a LinkedIn message being like, hey, is there anything you want to know? And I was just convinced, like, oh, there's some dirt. And then I asked him, and there wasn't, and I was incredibly disappointed, honestly. There wasn't any dirt. He was just like, no, I just felt bad because I left in the middle of your search. Also, then his wife wanted to have coffee with me because she wanted more friends in tech. It was cool. It was weird. It was great. But anyway, research heavily, determine your non-negotiables, and have them written on a piece of paper before your interview so you can look at them throughout the whole time. You might know that, but if you're in a high-pressure situation, you might not really care as much. You have to keep them in your mind the whole time. And in the first contact, your first interview, talk salary. Don't bring up the number yourself, but talk salary. At the end, when they ask that little, so is there anything you want to know about the company? Ask 2 to 3 questions that are not related to salary so you don't seem pushy. Then ask about the salary. That's all you need to do. And if they're offering a number that's egregious to you, that is just ridiculous, then politely say, oh, I don't think I can work with that, but thank you so much for your time. Don't wait until you've invested 6 interviews, 3 hours, and done your hair to walk away, because at that point, you've wasted your time and you're honestly more likely to take a bad offer. All right. Tactic 2, find motivation. Oh yeah, by the way, for the first one, your non-negotiables do not have to just be salary. My biggest non-negotiable in my last job was to do with my manager. I had a whole list of qualities that I wanted my manager to have, because I'd had managers that I didn't take due in the past, and I figured that the key to a happy work life was to find a manager that fit with a lot of criteria. I had salary non-negotiables as well, but I picked my current job 90% because I liked the manager, and that has not steered me wrong. Anyway, back to tactic 2. Find motivation, real or imaginary. Look, it turns out it's a lot easier for me to go up and do something hard if there's a tangible reward right in the moment. So I've devised myself a little bit of a reward system. It's very similar to one used for small children. if any of you know primary school teachers, like, if you do this, you get a gold star. But for me, it's if I get them to go up by 5,000, I get a cool coffee from my favorite coffee shop. If I get them to go up by 10,000, then guess who's getting a croissant too? This person. 15,000, all of the above, and I get to watch my favorite movie tonight. Like, negotiate a sign-on bonus? Guess it's ice cream time. Like, look, it does not make logical sense that a fun little coffee drink is more motivating to me than more financial security. But honestly, a lot of the numbers on a screen are abstract. And a latte is definitely not abstract. So the reward system, like, look, I'm a small child in a lot of ways, but it works for me. Another tactic that works for me is pretending that I'm going up against an imaginary enemy. So right before an interview, or right before a negotiation process, I just tell myself that it's down to me and one other person, and the other person is this jerk who one time at a hackathon told me to be more ladylike. Yeah. And so I go into this negotiation thinking, oh, I'm going to crush him. His spirit is, I don't want him getting more than me. He is not afraid to be a jerk. He definitely is not afraid to be a jerk. And it works for me, though. Having this imaginary enemy works really well. It's very funny. The last time that I was up for a job and it was down to me and one other person, I found out months after the fact that it was someone who I'd rooted for on a reality show. So that was weird. Definitely not my imaginary enemy. Honestly, seemed like a great person, but that doesn't help in the negotiation. Anyway, my third motivation is to find pictures of what you want. So during my last job search, one of the reasons I wanted to hire salary is because I really wanted to get a dog. And I didn't live in an apartment that was dog-friendly, so I had to move to a new apartment, and dog-friendly apartments cost more money, and then I'd have to deal with that. And so that was like probably 50% of the reason I was looking for a job was because I wanted a dog. And so in the middle, or like in my negotiation process, on the second monitor, which we'll get to that later, my second monitor, which it's a very important part of my negotiation process, but on my second monitor, I had a picture of a dog that I wanted to adopt. And it worked out for me. Like, luckily, by the time I got the new job, she was still for sale or not for sale, for adoption, because she is a nervous wreck. She's a good dog, but she does know how to open doorknobs. It's weird. She's too smart. She's wonderful, though. Tactic 3, project false confidence. So here's the thing. Even if you are filled with self-doubt and you don't actually believe that you deserve this, for the 15 minutes that you are negotiating, you've got to pretend that you're a person who believes in themselves. Like, you don't have to believe in yourself. You just have to try to seem like that sort of person. And look, for me, that's a lot easier than actually being that sort of person. I can pretend. Like, come on, I have an imagination. I'm terrible at lying. I'm terrific at make-believe. I have a lot of sitcom-based motivation. This one's from New Girl. All right, now tactic 4. This is the most important one. This is to write a script. It's a lot easier to project false confidence if you know exactly what you're supposed to say. And so I have a detailed document with every possible situation that could come up and my exact response. And I'll post it in the Slack channel for this room afterwards, so if anyone's interested, they could see it. But you write these down in a document, and you keep that document open during negotiations, because nowadays, so many negotiations are done virtually, so they don't know that you are reading something verbatim. You don't have to be face-to-face with someone. You just have to look put together from your shoulders up while you're staring at your second monitor or your first monitor that just has a full list of every single word you need to say. And it can include all of the pleases and thank yous. It can be as nice as you usually are. It doesn't have to sound like someone else. Here are some examples that I use. Oh yeah, by the way, in your scripts, make sure you're not stating your desired salary first. Just don't do it. Wait for them. When they ask for your desired salary, you say, the salary I'm looking for is highly dependent on the company, team, role, and really the entire compensation package. If you could please share the range that you're looking to hire for, I can tell you if that falls within something I'd consider. Thank you. You do not have to use your phone voice, but for some reason I always do. And this works for all of it. Like, I have never had anyone seriously push back on that response. Like, I've had a couple of times people try, but if you out-polite them, they will cave. And that is something us people pleasers are very good at. We can out-polite anybody. If they say, like, oh, no, really, tell us. You'd say, oh, no, I really just want to hear what's going on your side. I'm sure you must have a range. Would you mind going into detail about it? It works. It really works. And it works for a lot of, the other ones work as well, though I will say, like, the initial interview one is the first one that I ever came up with, and I've used it more than anything else. It is very effective. I didn't even write it. Someone in a Slack I'm in wrote it when I was struggling with this, and I just kept that Slack message up before an interview. I've thanked her so many times. She's amazing. But the other scenarios, and I really do have about a dozen scenarios mapped out in a Google Doc. But like, if you've received your offer, even if it's a lot of money and you think it's a good offer, you should still ask for more. I know that is counterintuitive, but just try. It doesn't hurt. If you do it nicely, nobody's going to take away your offer. If you nicely say, thanks so much, I'm really happy to get this offer. I really enjoyed the interview process. I'm so excited about the thought of joining this team. I really liked you guys. But with my background and experience, X isn't really what I had in mind. I was hoping for a little bit closer to Y. What can we do to bring the offer closer to my expectations? They're not going to pull an offer because you say that. Like, nobody can reasonably pull an offer because you nicely asked for more. They might say no, but so what? If they say no, you end up with the exact amount you would have had before. And then if they say no, you ask for a signing bonus. Yeah. If they say no, you say, okay, well, if we can't raise the base compensation, let's talk about the other benefits and what we could do there. Let's talk about a sign-on bonus, for example. Like, one time, I made $5,000 just because I asked for $10,000. It was the fastest time I've ever made any amount of money like that. It was one sentence. Do you think that we could possibly do a sign-on bonus? I've seen Similar offers come with a sign-on bonus of $10,000, and they came back and said, how about $5,000 for a sign-on bonus? I hadn't actually seen similar offers with it. I hadn't. I mean, I had online, but not like directed at me. I tricked them. And even if it's not pure cash, there are so many other things that you can negotiate for. You could negotiate to take a week off paid before you start and essentially just get a free week of money and have that not count against your time off. I know a lot of the employment laws are a lot better over here because you guys have like rights or whatever. I don't know what that's like in the United States, but I've asked for extra days of vacation. I've asked for an increased educational stipend or for budget for my home office. And people say no. I don't want you to think that you're just going to constantly get yeses. You probably won't get every single thing you ask for. Does anyone ever? But you will get a lot more than if you had asked for absolutely nothing and thanked them for having you because you trust them so much. But yeah, signing bonuses, PTO, specific days off just in advance. It's great. There are so many other things that you can get. Or even if you're comparing different benefit packages, some companies offer benefits for the gym, some do not. If you have an offer that has that sort of benefit worked in, and you have another one for a company you like more that doesn't, you can just go to them and say, hey, I have this other offer. The benefits are a lot better. What can we do to bring that up? You can also ask for remote pay or remote work, which, by the way, I believe the research says that remote work is equivalent to about $7,000 of salary. So that's pretty cool. I just really like working remotely, too. But yeah, those are some of the scripts. Tactic 5. This is the final and possibly the most helpful tactic. As much as humanly possible, try to stick to email. Look, you're going to have to be on the phone with someone or on Zoom or face-to-face to an extent. But as soon as you get that offer, I want you to suddenly become one of the most busy people in the universe and have a very, very, very tight schedule. Because it is a lot easier to negotiate over email. You know why? Because you get to proofread it first. You don't have to deal with the agent of chaos that is your brain. There is no chance that your email is going to suddenly say something different. No, you get to fully control it, not like you do your mouth. I know you actually control what you say, but come on. In negotiations, it's a lot better to have everything in writing as much as possible. And my way of doing this is right after I get an initial offer, I send a thank you email because I'm polite, but also because I want to reiterate my counteroffer in more detail and establish a thread that we can keep to in writing. We've already established the precedent that we're talking in writing here, and while they will almost certainly want to finalize everything over a phone call, you can hash out most of the details without actually having to say a word. It's wonderful. All right. Always emails. Now, those are all of my tactics, and that's everything I have for you. But here are some resources that really helped me. There's the Bad with Money podcast. There's an episode from 4 or 5 years ago, Negotiating Like Taylor Swift, which is what made me actually try to negotiate in the first place. There's the salary negotiation, Make More Money, Be More Valued by Patrick McKenzie, which is one of the best written negotiation columns I've ever read. It's specifically for software developers, and it's excellent. It has a handful of those scripts in there as well, and it's part of how I started doing scripts in my own life. Then there's also like counteracting negotiation biases like race and gender in the workplace. That's by the Harvard program on negotiation. And there's also an article on why women don't negotiate. So that is everything I have for you. Does anyone have any questions? All right, thank you very much.